Hey friends, I am Rabbi Greg Marcus. I use he, him pronouns. And good news, it is Torah Tuesday once again. This week we are going to be looking at the Torah portion called Terumah. So let's open up and see. Yeah, I'll put up Safaria, that's what we use. And join me as I kind of figure out what it is I want to put in my source sheet for doing Torah study on the upcoming Torah Saturday. So I am going to share my window. Okay, we will close this commentary because I did do a little bit of preparation before because the Torah portion's so long, it would just be too big a task. Okay, so here's our Torah portion, Terumah. It says that God spoke to Moses. As a quick recap, we are still at Mount Sinai. 2 weeks ago, the Israelites arrived at Mount Sinai. Moses went up and started a conversation with the divine. The divine came down and gave the Ten Commandments. Okay, and the next Torah portion we saw it's called Mishpatim, and we got a whole bunch of rules and laws for how to set up the society. Okay. Now, so what comes next? Well, you had the Ten Commandments, these big overarching ideas. Then we get into more detail with rules and laws for the society. So what comes next? Well, we see that Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, the divine is still speaking to Moses. So this is still all up on Mount Sinai. So it's tell the Israelite people to bring me gifts, and accept gifts from me, any person whose heart is moved. And it starts talking about all these beautiful things like gold and silver and skins and oils and spices and gems. And then let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell within them. Okay, so a couple of things going on here. First of all, I am going to save to my sheet. Okay, so here's the Terumah Torah Tuesday. I want to save this beginning. It's good to frame things, okay, as we're getting started. This was the way the Jewish people, the Jewish sages have broken up the story. It's not necessarily consistent with the chapters and the verses. They have decided, okay, here's the place where we're going to center our teaching for this week. So it's all about these gifts. All right, key gifts should be brought, all these pretty things that can be and this idea of let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. That is a cool idea. That might be something um, exactly as I show you. Okay, that's kind of an interesting turn of phrase. I wonder what that's all about. Okay, and then all of a sudden we're getting into make an ark of wood and cover it with gold. And all of a sudden we're into architectural detail. Set the poles and the rings, make a cover. So here's the ark that you put the tablets of the Ten Commandments and make a cover of gold. Well, then on top of these were the cherubim, the cherubim. Um, I like this phrase hammered work. So we'll just kind of we'll add that to the sheet. We'll kind of figure out how all of these things come together. Um, and what does it mean to kind of have these cherubs part of the same piece of the golden cover? Okay, so then what keeps going? Um, all right, we're getting explained that God's presence kind of is between the cherubs, and then more details about golden rings and poles. Oh, and you got to make bowls and ladles. And there's this table where you're going to put bread, and the table was covered with gold as well. And then make a lampstand of pure gold. So va'asata menorat. Okay, so this is talking about the fashioning of the menorah. Well, we all know what a menorah is. Um, so let's just keep these different sections about the menorah, and it's going into a lot of detail here. There's all these um, there's just a lot that's going on there. So once again, it says it's going to be brought together out of a single piece of gold. Sorry, we're getting a lot of stuff that's happening here. Let's just then after all this like gold work, now it's like we're putting together the cloth and the clasps, and there's all this detail about the construction. So who would have thought that after the list of laws, we would get detailed architectural instructions for Moses on how to build this tent of meeting? And I'm not going to go through all of this, but I just want to give you a sense for just how much is happening here. It's quite a lot. There's curtains on the inside, and there's covers, and there's all kinds of stuff. And then it continues. You would not believe it, but a third of the book of Exodus is devoted to the creating of the tabernacle. So it's obviously a big deal to the authors of the Torah. And we're still going. We're getting the width of the outer enclosure now. I mean, these are just incredibly detailed instructions. So let's just see what we have here. So this was the source sheet before I began it. And then what did I tell people? What do we want to keep? What are we going to dig into? Well, there's this idea of bringing me gifts, and everyone's whose heart is so moved. That's kind of nice. Let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. I'm really familiar with this. There's actually a beautiful song that's sung in synagogue sometimes. The idea that God is inside of all of us. It doesn't say, so I can dwell in the sanctuary. Um, God is giving exacting instructions for the tabernacle. Um, these cherubim of gold. But the thing that I think I want to talk about though is the menorah, because it's a symbol that is still very powerful today. A menorah is something that we work with, we know from Hanukkah. So this is our first mention of the menorah. So I'm going to go back to 2531, and let's just see. Let's start rabbit holing. Let's see what the commentary has to say. So, as we often do, we'll start with the medieval French commentator Rashi of beaten work. You should not make this of separate pieces. It should be all of one piece. Okay, that's kind of interesting. We'll add that to the sheet. And just think about that. You got this lampstand that's just one piece of gold that you kind of have to hammer out together. Okay. Um, Again, these are all drawn out from the same one. That's interesting to me as well. Um, I have to say that I would say I'm the least handy person. I'm the least crafty person I've ever met. But that's not completely true because my father was even less handy and less crafty than I am. I never saw him pick up a hammer the whole time I was growing up. I at least will know know how to use a hammer. But anyway, all right, this is kind of details about the different parts. Um, okay, I'm going to add this because it once again reiterates this idea that it's all from a single piece. Ibn Ezra, um, this is getting into, uh-oh, when I opened this up again, the Hebrew went away. Let's bring back the Hebrew. Thank you, Safaria. Um, There's kind of some mystery about this because there's actually an extra yud in the Torah, which is what this is talking about here. That's not something I really want to get into at the moment. What about Sforno? He often has things to say. All right, two crowns represented by the ark. Um, the Torah arranged the subject of the menorah as something that is totally integrated. That's kind of interesting. Um, so I'm going to look at this in a little bit more detail because I think there's potentially some extra symbolic meaning. This idea of wholeness, construction of an entire whole thing. That could be kind of cool to talk through. Um, let's see. Chizkuni, um, it's near the table. Uh, yeah, it's kind of more construction details, not particularly interesting to me. Um, I can't see fashioning. I mean, if we wanted to have a construction-based Torah study, I could do that, but I'm not the rabbi. I'm not the person to lead that. Or Chaim brings in some nice mysticism sometimes. Um, okay, this is suggesting some extra words meant that if you didn't have gold, you could build it out of something else. Maybe. Um, let's see, what else? What else is going on? Let's get something a little juicier here. Rabbeinu Bahya. Okay, so this is talking about there's a phrase here that just jumped out at me. The purposes of the menorah was to establish lofty meaning in the minds of people. You know, this is a symbol that we're still using today. The soul benefits from lights and it derives pleasure and joy from light. Okay, so I think there's some interesting things here which are definitely relevant to today. Um, ooh, that's not what I want to do. All right, let's close this. Oh, we've lost our Torah portion. Where did it go? Okay, we gotta scroll back down. I think we were about, yeah, we were on verse 31. Okay, so we've looked at commentary. Are there any other categories here that we might want to check out? Okay, Second Temple, that is interesting. The Second Temple was destroyed by the Romans in 66 of the Common Era. So writings from that period, that these are like historical things, right? The War of the Jews, this was a history written by the Jewish Roman citizen Josephus. Um, so let's see. It looks like uh, the magnitude. I think he's talking about what when they sacked the temple, like what the Romans carried away. So there were beautiful hangings, but I happen to know that the Romans took the great menorah out of the temple too. I wonder if he talks about that. There was a lot of gold and ivory. Okay, it looks like it was a pretty bloody, conflict, incredible. Okay, but for those that were taken in the temple, the greatest figure of them all was the golden table, the candlestick also. So that's talking about, this is talking about the menorah. So the Romans took the menorah, and I happen to know, um, that in the Arch of Titus, which was constructed like 10-ish years after the conquest of Jerusalem, this is like a big giant arch that's in Rome, and I've seen this. There is a depiction of them carrying the giant menorah out of the temple. So I am going to put a placeholder in here. And this is interesting because um, this was real history. This was 2,000 years ago. Romans kept really good records of things. So, so I'm going to add this placeholder for the Arch of Titus. Okay. Anything else? Anything else we want to look into? Well, I don't feel like we've quite gotten enough yet. I think we're coming together, um, but I do. There's some interesting discussion about the Torah. I like to look at the Musar discussions too. Musar is a practice of personal growth by developing soul traits, developing character traits within ourselves. So, what might they have talked about? This Shnei Lechu Tabarit. Um, so, I've explained that the tabernacle was a reenactment of creation, a microcosm. All right, this is kind of cool. There was a parallel tabernacle in the celestial regions. So I don't know. This is just kind of cool stuff. It's really heavy mysticism. And yeah, they believe there's the temple up in the heavens and there was a replica of it down on the earth. It's almost like a Platonic kind of thing. So that's kind of interesting. Um, let's see what the second one had to say. Um, we've discovered um, this is more about the higher regions. Um, Here's more about the tabernacle being a reenactment of creation. Uh, okay, so um, all right, so this is kind of getting into some halacha stuff. It doesn't really grab me particularly. I'm also let's see. Is there anything from the six branches, any sources that we haven't kind of looked at, any commentary? I'm curious if there's any women's commentary because I always like to have female voices in a Torah study. I think that's really important. Okay, so here's the women's Torah commentary. Um, okay, so this is interesting. It looked like a tree. Yeah, and there were all these um, things like later on it gets into things shaped like almond blossoms, which I included earlier. So that's kind of interesting. I wonder if there's anything else about um, this kind of idea of hammered, them being made from a hammered work. Let's take a look at the commentary. So this is going again with this idea. I don't know if something's going to be interesting with this or not, but I'm going to keep it. I just have some itch that there might be something interesting here about creating a huge, elaborate piece of art, of decoration, of worship from like basically you're taking a huge chunk of gold and you're just hammering it out, and then here's this piece over here, which we're going to hammer into the cherubim, and here's the other cherub, and then there's this whole like cover, which is all part of this single piece. I mean, the craftsmanship that it would take to do that is just kind of breathtaking and almost hard to imagine. So, um, This is kind of more about the cherubim. That doesn't quite do it for me either. Because I'm just interested in this, for a non-crafty person, this idea of like hammering out all of this stuff. Rabbeinu Bahya, okay, this is talking about God and God's miracles. That's not really doing it for me either. Um, well, I think that there is plenty here to talk about. Um, I think we can sort of have a really good discussion about the symbology of the Mishkan and the above and the below, the creating of the menorah. I do wonder, though, if you look at the Arch of Titus, you'll notice that it's a seven-armed menorah, and on Hanukkah we do an eight-armed menorah, which has to do with like the Hanukkah lights. So maybe I will add one more placeholder, a placeholder for the Hanukkah miracle. And I say that because, once again, this was the same lamp. The temple had been desecrated. They wanted to reconsecrate it. They wanted to relight the menorah, and there was no oil, right? So that's our one of our most widely celebrated holidays is all connected to this thing, which we know really existed because we have historical evidence. We don't have it anymore. It's probably was melted down. Um, but it was kind of a real thing. Okay, so let's just review. Bring me gifts, make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. I probably won't keep it this time. God is showing Moses exactly what to do. There's this idea of the hammered work. Um, make a lampstand of pure gold. Okay, and this is where, and then there's six branches, and there's all this detail. So I could probably consolidate this into a single source. Um, Once again, it's one piece. And then we have the Rashi talking about it all as a single piece. Um, and that's sort of further elaborated. We had Sforno's idea. We had Rabbeinu Bahya contribution. So anyway, I think this will be really interesting. I'm going to stop the share. If you are a crafty person, I hope this has been of interest to you. If you're into the mysticism of the temple above and temple below, maybe I'll find something about kind of light and the role that light plays in our tradition. But I think this is enough to get started, and I'm curious to see how I will tweak this and finish it off. If you've watched this long, please give this video a like or a share. Follow the American Musar channel so you can see all of these videos that come up, and it will tell YouTube to share this video as well with other people. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next Torah Tuesday or next Torah Saturday. Bye bye.